It's 7:01, that clock is off.
I didn't get any message saying that Roseanne wasn't, that he wasn't gonna be here. Thank you.
So, my question is this, do we not do this till after the session? Because,
That would be, I think we can go ahead and do what we planned.
no, because you don't want to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we can pause this.
Move it, right, exactly.
So,
You're right.
so let's make that change at the beginning of the meeting.
Recording in progress.
Otherwise,
Or you can,
Scott, do you want to make any changes to the agenda going in? Do you want to move?
Well, that was my only thought. If you wanted to bring the manager's updates to the beginning,
Okay,
we could do that.
when we should probably put this to the end,
okay.
after executive session.
I haven't, I think I'm on.
You wanna
If
use,
you hit the big end.
Tell me now.
use that if you want.
Here.
So if you click over here, and then select. Where is it? Stamina. You can use this one.
Yeah, okay, I just got this here. Oh, I think I got it.
Now you're on.
Mhm.
And there's a,
Yeah.
Because,
oh, you have to go to the right.
Technology that's finest here. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. I will call the meeting to order and remind everyone that there's a sign-in sheet on the table by the door. If you didn't sign it on the way in, please do so before you leave so we have a record of who is here this evening. We'll start. Sylvia's not here, but we would all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this point, I'd like to make a change, propose a change to the agenda, given that there are some people here for items that fall under agenda item number 9, which is the town manager updates. I would prefer to move that up to number 4. We'll leave the public comments where they are, but move 9 to public 4.
And then 6, and then 6 is gonna go to,
Okay, and then we'll take number 6 and drop it down to the very bottom after an executive session. So This is a portion of the meeting where we open it up for public comments. These would be any comments that you have that relate to something that's not on the agenda. It used to be the old other business. If anybody's here that would like to bring anything to our attention that's not on the agenda for tonight's meeting, now would be the time to do that. Seeing nothing, we will move on to what used to be the agenda item formerly known as number 9.
We're gonna approve the minutes first.
Oh, we should approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 8th.
Second.
Seconded by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we will move on to the agenda item formerly known as 9. And Scott?
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. I have to apologize for wearing my mask. We went to a wedding on Saturday, and everybody around the table seems to have come down with COVID. And
There's a
including
lot
my
of it,
wife, so.
a lot of it going around.
But anyways, for the Verizon application, Vertex and Verizon have until Friday, January 19th to submit an application to the Public Utilities Commission. But they have told me they will get something in before that time. And so we anticipate getting something from them or getting an application notice that they submitted an application sometime in the next 2 weeks. Depot Street properties, I have Gordon on the line here also. Gordon has gotten there's some environmental issues with the water level down there.
Before we move on to that, I know that there are a lot of people who are here that have thoughts and concerns relative to the cell tower discussion. I don't want to move off of that because I asked, it is on the agenda, but the discussion of the larger question really wasn't something that we anticipated in the context of the meeting. But I want to give people the opportunity to speak briefly if they just have something they want to say. We covered most of the input on the cell tower at the meeting that was dedicated to that purpose. I do know, Carol, that you have submitted a letter and an attached magazine article, I believe it was a magazine article. We have seen that.
Okay.
It was distributed to us, and thank you for that information. I know you spent the time to come here, so I will allow a little bit of discussion if you feel there's a need to do that, but I'm going to limit it to very short comments at this point in time because we really hadn't anticipated spending a lot of time discussing the topic. If this was just a simple update on the time frame of the process. So are there questions or comments on that particular part of it? Yes.
Yeah, Steve Berry. My concern is larger than the Verizon issue, but it brings the Horizon issue. Verizon. Did I say Verizon? All right. Verizon issue into play. And that is something that's going on with the federal government. And I have a document, at least a portion of it, to share with the select board tonight. But this is, there is underfoot a HR 3557, American Broadband Deployment Act of 2023. That act will actually take away the autonomy of local governments in the siting of cell towers, etc. We will not have our autonomy anymore. The sovereignty of the local will be gone. It's being debated right now in Congress. Congressperson Rebecca Ballant right now is listening to all of the information. The minority report I have here as well, but I cite in my little letter to you that we have an existing process in place that is designed to protect citizens from the threats posed by outside authorities, and that's my concern. This protection needs to hold firm, I believe. Our local authorities, all the way up to the governor, need to protect our rights and not give them away. Therefore, I urge the select board of the town stop the Verizon sighting in our town from happening. Number 2, write a letter to the congressperson Ballant to vote no on H.R. 3557, the Broadband Deployment Act of 2023. And finally, to write a letter to Governor Phil Scott to do all in his power to protect state sovereignty. So that's what I'd like to submit to you. That's it in brief, but it's much bigger than Verizon because you're going to take away your rights.
Yeah, and I've said this at other meetings, and I hope everybody understands that we as the local community or local municipal government do not have ultimate control over the issue even now. The state has the ability, no matter what we say, to override the local decision based on the larger public good. So even though this may, and I haven't seen the actual language, even though this may create an even more difficult process, right now, the state's going to listen to what we have to say. Ultimately, they may overrule us, but at least we have some statutory party to the discussion. And the Planning Commission recently submitted a communication to us where they've taken a position in opposition to the proposed cell tower based on 4 bullet points. And they're well within their authority to do that. And I want to make it clear that the Planning Commission has statutory party status to the process. The Select Board has separate statutory party status. And it's the same as Act 250. You may find yourself, I don't think we do in this particular situation, but you may find yourself where the Planning Commission may have a position that doesn't mirror or reflect the Select Board's position based on a different set of priorities or jurisdictions. So Act 250 and the process that gives approval or non-approval, the process that hears applications for any types of these public utility projects anticipates that there might be a conflict or a differing opinion between the two parties. So the Planning Commission has taken a position, I believe, Phil, and the Select Board will at some point, and we're still under discussion as to when's the appropriate time to do that. But where I was going with that long dissertation was, we don't have the ultimate authority even now.
Well, if we found that out with labeled GMO laws, didn't we?
Yeah.
That was passed by the state of Vermont and vetoed by federal.
And we are creatures of the state. Thank you for those comments, Steve. Anybody else that wanted to speak briefly? Yes.
My name is Leah Parks. I just wanted to urge the Select Board to review the New Hampshire final report that was published in 2020. I just want to quote from it. It came out with 15 recommendations to protect people, wildlife, and the environment from harmful levels of radiation after a year-long investigation with numerous meetings and expert testimony. It's available online, easily available. One of the recommendations was to require setbacks of 1,640 feet for new wireless antennas from residences, businesses, and schools. And we all know that this Hunter Park location is closer than that to both the Riley Rink, which is filled with children all the time, and the Red Box Community School.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah, my name's Tina Victor. So I'm just wondering why we're handling this cell tower, Verizon cell tower, differently than we did the AT&T. I mean, we heard from the Select Board and the Planning Commission at the end of the meeting because it was clear that the majority were opposed to that location with AT&T's tower. And I would say the same circumstance, the same response from the community was to oppose Verizon's location at, Riley Rink Hunter Park. I mean, yes, there was some people from the business community and some people concerned with, communication for emergencies, but no one is saying that we don't need the service. We're just saying we think that's a horrible location for the reasons Leah just mentioned. And also the fact that it's a recreational area And it would really sort of deface and mar and be this hideous industrial, like out of place monstrosity.
Did-
And it shouldn't be
Yeah,
there.
I understand
Verizon hasn't even looked into other locations.
I
because-
understand the crux of your question, and I'd like to respond to it. I powwowed with the planning commission briefly near the end of the meeting, and as you know, I did not participate in the previous meeting with AT&T, and at that point in time, I said, is it premature for us to make a decision tonight, since there's no application filed, and there's still, today is not an application filed? What would be the appropriate time for us to jump in and make our thoughts known? And we both, the chair of the planning commission and myself, thought at that point in time that we should take the whole discussion under advisement and make an informed decision later. The planning commission has done that. The select board may do that in the near future. Our approach up to this point has been to watch the application process closely to see what happened. Everyone here and at that meeting has provided valuable information to help guide whoever winds up making the decision through this process. But any meeting that we hold, whether it be a public hearing for any kind of bylaw or that hearing, which was actually Verizon's meeting, where they were presenting information to us. It wasn't our meeting. We were there to receive information, not to give it. But any meeting that we hold is not a referendum, unless it's town meeting or somewhere where it was advertised that people are going to have an opportunity to vote. So yes, there were people that spoke in favor, but it was certainly a very small minority of the people that attended. But if we had advertised that as our meeting, and we had advertised it as an actual town meeting where a vote would be taken, then you would get people that would come in knowing that they had an opportunity to make an impact on that decision. What tends to happen at meetings that we hold, whether it be a public hearing on any kind of bylaw or that type of meeting, is that people who are opposed tend to be the most vociferous, and that's common. We probably agree with you. I just want you to know that. But we can't say, well, out of the 75 people that were there, 65 spoke against it and 10 voted maybe in favor of it, so we should take that as a referendum on how the town feels. We can't do that. That's not allowed. So I agree. The overwhelming majority of the people spoke against it, and they're all people that I respect and accept their input as being valid and serious. But again, a long-winded way of saying that's not a referendum, it's not a vote. Good information was offered. One person can offer valuable information that has exactly the same weight as 50 other people. So that's what we have to consider in those kind of things. Why we haven't made the decision yet, we could enter the process at some point. At that point in time, we thought it was more appropriate to wait until an application's been filed. I could be convinced otherwise.
I have a question to
Well-
that end. Can I just?
Yep.
Is there any, I mean, in my opinion, or I'm just concerned that by not making a decision now, we're basically, I'm concerned that that's giving them a green light. So I guess I just don't understand. I mean, it's just me
Well,
asking.
that's exactly the same question that's been asked from the
No action is
from
being
the
attached
people in
approval.
attendance. So we'll.
And the planning commission did not have a quorum that night. So that was also part of the hold, because we did it together the last time we were.
Yeah. The night of the meeting,
Yes.
the planning commission did not have a quorum in attendance, so they couldn't take a position the night of the meeting.
But I think you said at the meeting that you were going to convene with the planning meeting to discuss the tower, but that still hasn't happened. And
I don't know if that's
regarding the
required,
AT&T tower, you strongly, like Scott, Murphy, our town manager, wrote to AT&T and I think the PUC, and it was still the advanced warning period. So you weren't waiting for any additional information. And I agree with what Jan just said, that no action is an action. You're implying that it's okay, and then
Well,
the clock will
I
start
disagree.
ticking
No
once
action,
the
no action
application
is
goes.
not an action. There has not even been an application filed yet, so we disagree on that point.
Then it's 30 days, so then the
But,
clock is ticking.
Wilbur, you had your hands up.
We had 3 planning commissions members there, isn't that a forum?
Somebody had,
Not at the end.
somebody had left. Maybe it was you.
I left about 2 minutes before the end.
Yeah, so at the point in the meeting where we would have made a decision, there was not a quorum of the planning commission there, so there couldn't have been a decision made at that meeting.
The other point I want to find out.
Which is not a significant impact one way or the other.
I don't think it's required that the two boards reconvene together to make these decisions. Is that your understanding?
Well, that's true, and I think the planning commission has taken the step of making a decision and forwarding that information to the select board just in their last meeting, to bring that information to us and send us a letter informing us of their decision. That is participation with the planning commission. I mean, it doesn't always happen in the context of a face-to-face meeting. That's kind of awkward and difficult to set up because it's two different statutory boards that have to operate under different sections of the statute. So we can do it, but it's very difficult to convene, and comes down to, there's a lot of questions as to who runs the meeting. Of course, I would think that I would, but that could be disputed. Okay, too many hands. Yes?
Could you take a vote tonight?
I think we could. It would happen under other business. And I would certainly entertain the question. It's actually something that I would prefer to do on the agenda. I mean, this was a simple update of where the process is right now that we're dealing with tonight. But from a legal perspective, I think we could under other business, since it would be based on information that we already had in our hand. But bear in mind that wasn't a public hearing, not a select board hearing, not a planning commission hearing. That was a meeting that was actually, it was Verizon's meeting, and we were participants, listening to what they had to say.
No,
I think if we were, I'm kind of thinking out loud here a little bit, but if we were to decide to make a decision, I think it would be important that we put it on the agenda so that people may participate like you are here this evening, to have input. I don't know, I mean, I think we've got a ton of information on this. It should be easy to make that decision. But
We were able to
I
make
think
it-
we could do it under
Yeah,
other
I-
business. Do you think so, Scott? I mean,
Well, I think you could technically.
yeah.
I would recommend doing what you were talking.
Well, that's kind of the way I feel about it. If we did it under other business without telling people we were going to do that in the context of this meeting, somebody would say, "Well, I wish I knew you were going to do that because I had something I wanted to say." And we try to adhere to the policy. Other business is to handle things that come up during the course of the week that need to be tended to and don't really require input from the public. This, I think, if we made that decision without allowing people access to the process, we could be criticized.
But was there a problem after the AT&T decision?
Um,
Because I don't.
I think that was perfectly legal, because that was the only agenda item for that whole meeting. So people were well aware that discussion was going to take place, and would have and had a tremendous amount of input at that point in time. Now we're however many days removed, and we're not in the context of that meeting anymore. So
Well, at the time.
we face these kind of issues all the time, and when in doubt, the best thing to do is to put it on an agenda in case somebody needs to come in and let their thoughts known. You're not making a decision in a vacuum. That's probably not the case here, but we need to give people that access to our process.
So let's put it on the January 2nd.
Well, we could put it on for the next meeting.
I had a.
When is the next select board meeting?
January 2nd.
January 2nd.
Mr.
You know,
Chairman,
one of the,
when you get it.
another issue was that the meeting back on October 25th, the PUC, or what is it, the public's, whatever, the bodies that be, state of Vermont, they weren't able to attend. The Zoom wasn't working, as well as other people that weren't able to attend because of, being unable to come in person. So many people were, people were disenfranchised. The state, the state doesn't know how the town is feeling because
I agree with you.
they're not getting any feedback from us.
It's not a perfect, it's never a perfect venue, but I don't want to disenfranchise even more people by making a decision in a meeting where we didn't even warn that we were going to discuss it. So that's my only point as to tonight's meeting. Let's get it on the agenda, let's deal with it on the agenda.
I was just wanted to make one quick point, and that was when we said we would wait until the application was filed, which it hasn't been. So everybody knew that. And I think there was a lot of confusion about whether it had been filed or not. And it has not yet been filed. So people were under the impression last week that it had been filed, so.
But we don't have to wait till it's filed.
We don't have to wait. We don't have to wait. It is within the period that we. There's one thing that has happened in that time frame subsequent to that meeting is that the planning commission has taken a position on it. We probably shouldn't leave them hanging out there. We should, we received that letter just recently, and we should, as Heidi said, there seems to be a feeling on the board that we should put it on the agenda and deal with it. I think that might happen. Is there a consensus to put it on for the January 2nd meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It will be on the warning for January 2nd. I don't want to spend the whole
Yeah, we
evening
have-
on
we
this
have so
because we have
much.
a very lengthy meeting tonight and the budget. This is budget time, so we're really deeply into the numbers.
Okay, one hypothetical question. If Verizon applies tomorrow,
Yeah.
your plan is to still wait until January 2nd? And if so, how long does it take for the town to get a letter out on January 2nd? Is anyone working?
January 3rd.
earlier?
January 3rd.
Yeah.
And it will go to the planning commission?
No, it'll go to the state.
I mean, sorry, the public utility commission.
Well, a copy of it will go to the planners as another party. Okay? Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
That's all right. Excuse me. So on the Depot Street properties, we have a signed purchase and sales agreement with a possible buyer. And the issue that had come up before when there was previous ownership, it was about an environmental issue that was determined as a possibility, almost like as a possibility for the property. And so Gordon has reached out to the state and to consultant to see if we could get a SMAC letter done. And in order to get a SMAC letter, which is SMAC, well, actually Gordon's on the pipe right here, hold on a second. Gordon, you gonna chime in?
Sure. A SMAC letter stands for Site Management Activity Completed. And in this case, there apparently, and I don't know the explanation for all of this, but there was apparently a Phase 1 and Phase 2 done recently for Shires Housing and BCRC. And the town, kind of oddly, wasn't even copied on the Phase 2. But we did get a copy of it in November. That Phase 2 showed what appears to be some contamination coming or migrating to the site from two sites to the west of the property. One is a gas station that had a gas spill, I think back in 2020, and the other is what you would call dry cleaning fluid That shopping center to the west had a dry cleaner in there quite a number of years ago. It seems obvious to our consultant, Paul Miller, who's a hydrogeologist, that the two very low-level contamination sites, wells that they found, that it is migrating from the other side. But the state requires us to do just a little bit of additional monitoring and to check to see if there are any vapors. This is all, by the way, under the parking lot. It does not affect the three buildings in the front. But we have to jump through a few hoops. The petroleum leak is actually covered by the state's petroleum fund, other than a $250 basically deductible. They pay for that part of it. The balance is paid for by the state, paid for by the town, but reimbursed by the state if it is proven, as we expect it to be, that it migrated from the neighboring property and that they are the responsible party. So we've had that work done, a work plan's been given to the state. They've looked at it before, but they still have final approval. We have drillers lined up for the week after Christmas to keep this moving along quickly. I can't tell you how long they have to monitor it. I'm not real sure, but it's not a long time. So we expect this to wrap up fairly quickly. We do think that we're going to get a SMAC letter, essentially a second SMAC letter. There was a SMAC letter in place before it was even, before the deal with the Halpins was made back in 1990, I guess. So, or even before then. So it'd be a second SMAC letter, and it would just say that there's no more activity required on this site, and we are not the cause of any of the pollution.
And that's the likely outcome or the known outcome of this?
Well, it's the likely. I mean, Ivan, you would know far more than I do about what took place in that site, but I cannot imagine that there's no evidence anywhere that there was a dry cleaner on that site.
No.
And the gas station literally being a matter of feet away from the, I guess it's the southwest corner of the property, which is where the gas spill took place and where the well is located. It just seems overwhelmingly likely that that's the source of that. And there's small levels. It's common for it to migrate from site to site, particularly with a pretty high water level or whatever the word is there, the water underneath. And so that's what we expect. But look, there's no guarantees on that.
Yeah. So does the decision hinge on volatiles?
That's probably the more problematic. You know, you're talking about the dry cleaning fluid?
No, I'm talking about fumes. You talk.
Well, they do want to check the fumes, whether there is any vapor, and they're actually having to drill underneath the parking lot to see if there are vapors.
Yeah.
If there are vapors, by the way, if they're found to be pollutants under a building, they put in what's essentially the same thing as a radon remediation unit, which is really nothing more than a floor fan with a long pipe blowing the air up above the building. I don't know what they do if it's in a parking lot. Whether they just run it up a light pole and have it blown farther up in the air. To me, that makes no sense, but we'll have to find out more about that.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll stay tuned.
We're waiting for the state to say that this is the proper path and that you will be able to get a SMAC letter upon completion of this.
Yep.
And once we have that, we'll give Paul Miller the go-ahead and we'll move forward with this to keep this moving towards completion.
Just for the people who are in attendance, one of the attractive parts of this particular transaction was that the purchaser has been on the property for the last 30 years and was knowledgeable of it. And it appeared that there were little to no contingencies. So this one kind of jumped up and surprised us at the 11th hour.
And that's all I have on the manager's update.
Okay.
So now we're at 5.
go back to 5, thank you Heidi, which is liquor license for Sam's Wood Fired Pizza. As many of you know, he's in a new location at 4572 Main Street. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, probably right.
rear, Main Street.
Yeah,
rear.
I guess that's the property for the, or the location for the whole larger property.
Right.
But I assume this has gone through all the proper channels.
Yes,
and
it has.
has been reviewed by the chief and
Yeah.
and Mike, so there's no outstanding information or balances due to the town. I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a first-class liquor license for Sam's at their new location at 2572 Main Street.
4572.
Sorry, 4572.
I'll second that.
Let's give it to him at the other address, I think that. Okay, we have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. That's approved. We don't even sign anything anymore, do we, Scott? No. So the next agenda item is interesting, possibly to appoint Leslie.
Nope.
We're gonna move
7.
that.
Oh, we moved.
Sorry.
We moved out to the end after executive session. I need to stay with my own proposal here. We have received a new described potential mission for the Housing Task Force. The Housing Task Force spent a lot of time discussing what might be the disposition of the Depot Street property. That particular mission appears to have been removed from their purview, and we have in our, it's way at the end. We do have a,
Page 10.
Turn.
have you found it?
Yep, right here. 10.
10, okay. Not as deep as I thought it was.
There's some handwriting on it, you'll see.
Yeah. I was looking at it earlier.
Down a little further.
And this is a different housing task force than that old
That's
housing
it.
task force, just so you know.
Oh, okay. All right, Scott, do you have any lead in on this?
I don't, but Gordon's, again, on board here, and he goes to the meetings, records them, and he's the town liaison. Gordon, you want to chime in?
I'm here to speak to it.
Oh, okay, Ed, by all means, thank you.
We lost Gordon.
Thank you for giving us some time. The number of members of the task force, we wanted to be sure that we were working on things that you actually wanted us to work on. We created a mission statement for ourselves at the beginning of our work, and I believe you have it there. That mission statement, which we've been operating under, is to research, identify, and recommend short and long-term strategies for expanding housing that is affordable to low and moderate income residents of Manchester. With that mission, the mission is large and very intractable, and we just keep on getting more and more information about what's being done around the country, because everybody's facing this, to deal with the virtual disappearance of middle-income housing. What we've done, our first thing we did, the town hall property, the old property you were just discussing, you'd sent out a request for proposals, and Evernorth and Shires came back with a proposal. We went over that in detail and recommended it. That's been through the process. We are now looking to find other properties where a similar type of development would be more appropriate and less visible. We've also had a project to see how we could promote accessory dwelling units. And there's been a subcommittee that's been working very assiduously to research all that's involved in it, to write up brochures and to find ways to publicize over the net and other ways to local residents who have large properties, who have properties where an ADU would be appropriate, to let them know what the process is, what possible funds might be available to help them with it, and to encourage the development of more ADUs. We're in the middle of that now. But we recognize our task has just begun. And in order to give us more specific, greater specificity in our focus, we've added four objectives. I'll read them. The first is to identify opportunities for Manchester homeowners to add accessory dwelling units and publicize mechanisms that will help to achieve that end. That's continuing the work that we've already started. 2, to research and identify mechanisms to facilitate the process of permitting and financing the build-out of new, affordable, and middle-income housing on specific properties in Manchester. And that's what I said, the same thing that happened on the town property someplace else, the same format. Parenthetically, that the technical problems involved on permitting and designing and all that are complicated, but that's a minor fraction. The task is really going to be one of finding financing, of finding creative new ways of helping to subsidize financing. So I suspect we're going to be spending a lot of time on looking into the various financing programs that are out there, and maybe talking to area employers who are facing this problem, who might want to contribute, but some creative ways to make something happen, because financing is really what gets in the way of all this. And last, to research and discuss important housing-related topics facing our community and deliver written advisory opinions to the Select Board and Planning Commission when asked. We just want your feedback and make sure that we're headed in the right direction.
Thank you, Ed. I think these are all items that are worthy of discussion. As you may be aware, the Planning Commission recently submitted a proposed zoning change or land use ordinance change to the Select Board that would mesh with your first objective here to allow, let me back up just a little bit. Traditionally, and I think within the confines of the land use ordinance, accessory dwelling units is I would say a new name for what we used to call a mother-in-law apartment. When I was on the Planning Commission 40 years ago, we inserted language that would allow and this was key language, on a property where the landowner is the resident, and this is the piece that we've been discussing, the addition of what we call the mother-in-law apartment, but it's an accessory dwelling unit. Even though the density, they couldn't meet density requirements. So to me, the thing that triggers it being an accessory dwelling unit is you can't meet the density requirements under the bylaw. Recently, the Planning Commission proposed that the language that you need to be the primary resident, the resident of the primary structure, be removed. We felt that that was opening up areas of town to a lot of development, because basically it doubles the density on every lot in town. Where say you have an acre in a 1 acre zone, you have a house on it. If you are the primary residence, you would have the ability, if you met all the criteria, to put in an accessory dwelling unit. Now, under the proposal from the Planning Commission, they wanted to extend it to all properties, whether you live there or not. So basically that doubled the density on every lot in town, So now you own an investment property that you probably are renting out, and you can build a second residence on it and rent that out. And it got into the discussion of short-term rentals, which seems to be we have over 100 short-term rentals in Manchester now. Most of them used to be primary residences. They were purchased as investments, and they were taking out of the housing inventory that was available to people that wanted to live here, and now they're being, and I don't blame the owners for doing this. I mean, it's a very attractive thing to do with your property from a financial perspective. The town has not taken a position on short-term rentals. We don't have any local position on that. So in the absence of that, I was reluctant, and the board was reluctant, to open these properties up to what could be substantial increased housing inventory that might ultimately be short-term rentals rather than addressing the issues that you feel are important. So that's an unintended consequence that sits there that we don't have any position on at this point, so I think it's premature for us to be changing the ordinance to allow it before we do take a position on that. And I think the position on short-term rentals is probably more of a select board issue than a planning commission issue. Planning commission deals with physical infrastructure and how a property is developed. Select board deals with the more social aspects of it, which this would certainly fall under. So it's on our plate, and before we take big steps relative to ADUs, I think we need to have some sort of position in place. And we may, and no position might be our position. I don't know at this point.
Well, I think I think our entire task force is in agreement with the position you're at so far. We were considering the ADUs to be granny apartments. We were considering it under that old format.
Yeah.
The issue of short-term rentals is a hot one in our task force, and we have yet to come to agreement on.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah. I mean.
Put that as an objective of yours to solve that for us.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, very good people have purchased properties and converted them to short-term rentals, and like I said, I don't blame them for doing that. It's financially a very attractive thing to do, and I know people that have done that. What we have to decide is how do we allow that to happen in a way that also allows us to try to hang on to some of our housing inventory for people that want to live here.
Now, and I think it even goes a little bit beyond that. Short-term rentals on an existing property with that's a resident can be a good way for people who are on fixed incomes to augment their income.
Yes.
That's a whole different thing and a whole different public policy issue than people or corporations or hedge funds or individual people buying up half a dozen houses and building a business out of short-term rentals. Those are very different.
Yeah, the difficulty that we have, especially at the local level, is trying to create land use regulations that are based on social strata or financial issues, or even ownership. We can't say, well, you can build this if you, although we do, with our current law, you can build this if you're a resident, but you can't do it if you live elsewhere. That's tough.
Ivan, Gordon has his hand up.
Gordon, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this discussion is an example of the problem the Housing Task Force is having. If your mission is too broad, you don't get anything accomplished. And at least this is my perspective, I'm not speaking for the committee or the task force. We really do need some guidance. Initially, we were tasked with looking at the Depot Street property and whether it was appropriate for the Shires housing. As that has fallen aside, we've just kind of been out there looking at various things, and we have people who show up to meetings and want to talk about short-term rentals or want to talk about ADUs. And you could spend a lot of time talking about both. They're tied together. It's impossible to talk about an ADU without talking about short-term rentals. And people can disagree about those. But to the extent the board could say something, we really want you to focus on finding new property for affordable housing or some new way to deal with it, we're happy to do that. It just, we don't want to duplicate the effort of the planning commission or the select board if we can help it. I think that's what, and thank you, Ed, for showing up to talk.
Thank you, Gordon, and I think that we need to consider you a resource for us to help to navigate our way through these discussions too. So I thank you for sharing this with us. I've exposed my reservations or concerns on objective number 1 because that's the only one that I had any reservation or concern with. The rest of it looks like it would be very helpful to the town. To me, we haven't discussed it as a board.
Would it be worthwhile, Mr. Chairman, to review what the municipality actually can do in regard of housing? I mean, what can we actually affect in the effort to bring that about?
Ultimately, the town has the ultimate control over properties that we own. And that was the attractive thing with the Depot Street property, was that if the town was going to try to facilitate something, this was with a property that we owned. Unfortunately, and we've recently found another reason why it might not have worked there. If exactly where we're going to build apartments has an environmental issue, that would have really stalled the process. But ultimately, it appeared that there just wasn't space if we were going to continue the use of the front part of the property in the way that it was being used. There just wasn't space to do it there. And I think there's other places in town that would lend themselves to affordable housing and for a partner such as Northshire Group to come in here and partner. But the town doesn't own any of those. So then it becomes a process where somebody else could help to facilitate.
We've also discussed at a board level that we want to use some of the proceeds of the sale of that property to further that number, or finding another property. So that's something we just haven't put a fine point on it, but we definitely.
Yeah. So there may be some funds available to help to facilitate that. Objective number 2.
Places where there are funds available.
Yeah.
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 And then the other thing, I think, being infrastructure, water, sewer, we can have some bearing on that. But I just bring that up because that's the kind of thing, when you think about what we're thinking about, is what we own, what the municipality, the utilities that we can help with. And also, if we do, the proceeds come along, I've asked whether or not that can go into a fund specifically for the purpose of affordable housing, but that may be taxpayer or resident directed at town meeting level.
Yeah, I think if we were going to create a new fund, most likely that would be a voter approved measure. Yes.
Hi, I'm Cindy from Habitat for Humanity, and one of the things I think the town can think about is exactly what you were just saying, is the infrastructure, because if you find, as a task force, or anybody finds a plot of land that we think is viable for affordable housing, the organization having to put in roads and infrastructure like we had to do at Jennifer Lane makes those lots so that they're almost not affordable. So, we learned back in 2009, we had to do all the roads and the sewer and all that other stuff for Jennifer Lane. If the town could find a way to help in future projects, that would be huge.
So I think what we have to kind of do, we should probably review this and talk about it, and then come back to you if we have any other kind of things that jump out.
Sure.
But then also having regular updates between the two groups, I think would be really great.
Yeah.
Well, we have definitely agreed amongst ourselves that we just want to be a resource to supply thinking, so what public policy might look like, and then put it in your hands.
That's,
Awesome.
that's very helpful.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Get back to my agenda here. I'm glad you're having a problem. Okay. I believe, Heidi,
Yes,
that
sir.
now we're to agenda item number 6.
I agree.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's after
No.
executive
Oh,
session.
that's-
Oh, that's after
Yeah,
agenda,
we're
yeah.
going
Oh,
to
yeah,
budget.
yeah.
I
Sorry.
think we're going to budget. Is that right?
8, budget, yes. Thank you. Steve?
Jump in the gun there.
We could do.
Excuse me. Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Is it permissible for me to leave some?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We don't want to do that yet.
Got it.
Okay, so we're going to continue the review of the draft budget. I'll let Steve disseminate some information to us.
I don't know if you really want a copy, but this is my own letter. But this is also just the beginning of 127-page documentation.
Oh, thank you.
You only have 5 pages, but you have the minority report there, which basically outlines this HR, American Broadband Deployment Act.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to leave all but one copy with you, if that's okay.
I'll pass it. I'll pass it down.
Oh, right, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's for the assessing
Thanks.
portion of the discussion.
Yeah.
So Brian Vogel's here tonight, we sat through all this, and Mike Bells is on our line too. And so if we want to, as we get into the budget discussion, what I'd like to do is go over those high points that you questioned, and you have a sheet that shows some answers. But even before that, I'd like to just talk about this aspect, the reassessment fund.
Yes, okay.
So Mike has put that together, the sheet that I just passed out. Unfortunately, yours is not in color. I think I have COVID right now, but anyway. So you see down the bottom of that chart, it says the total expenses. So those are the 297,000, okay?
Yeah.
So in each of those fiscal years, that's how, on the revenue, that's how much was paid out. 5,000, 113, 127, and then 50,000, okay? We had expenses of 98, 107, and 50,000, 200.
Sorry to stop you already. You're saying that was the amount that was paid out. What do you, paid out of what?
That was,
That's the money we received, and then the cost was expenses.
Okay, so that was what money we
Well,
received from
let's-
the state for that fund.
Well, let me get to the, yeah, Mike can.
yeah,
So-
go ahead, Scott.
All right, so it's, down the bottom where it says the transfer fiscal year 2023, 113,000, that money's already been moved. So the balance, Heidi, that you saw in the reappraisal reserve fund, that's been taken out of there.
So now it's 183,355.
Right, right, and that's, the 183,000 is gonna be removed this fiscal year.
Okay. So a lot of it's timing.
A lot of it's timing. Mike says that it's, well, he's here, he can probably say for himself, but he tends to wait till the auditors have come through. And then that way you don't have any prior period adjustments to have to make sometimes. That's when you're transferring in that same fiscal year. So what he's saying is that with the salary reimbursements of 40,000, and the expenses was 257,000, our total expenses was 297,000, of which he's already moved 113, leaving 183 to be paid.
Okay.
To be moved. Does that make sense, Brian? Am I misstating something here?
I think so. So, the remaining balance will be transferred in this fiscal year, which is the final fiscal year where we incurred expenses. We've already incurred those expenses, and it's gonna be transferred to.
My understanding.
So Heidi's question
Well,
is,
yeah, why was it in our operating budget then? The
if,
expenses were in our operating budget.
What was the revenue?
No, it wasn't the revenue. That was.
yeah, the revenues were there, in the operating budget, as were the expenses. Where the concern that I raised was, hey, we already went through the reappraisal. These 249,622.
It was like 140,000.
Which became 297,084. So but anyways, those funds were still being accounted for as being in the reserve account, but we've already gone through the appraisal. To me, this is a reasonable explanation as to why they were still showing up in this report, but this report doesn't reflect that 113,000 already came out. Okay.
So you see where Mike has said that we'll have about 31,000 remaining when this is all done.
Yep.
And that's slightly skewed from, if you do the math, come down to about 60,000, at least that's what I did, 59 or something. Taking Brian's balance of 12,800. So, and that's only because Mike hasn't moved some stuff in since October. So there's a $30,000 difference there.
Okay, so that, I guess that's another part.
That's just a technical.
No, that's another part where I have concern. So if we have an expense that we know is a fixed expense, that we wait to take out of a capital account that then appreciates or depreciates, how are we controlling that figure? I mean, these are invested accounts.
How do we know our balance, right? How do we
So you
understand
can, to me, that's a problem. That I don't feel like there can be a lag when that is a drawn upon amount in an investment account. If we said at the end of this fiscal year we have to take $300,000 out of an account that has $315,000 out, and then that account depreciates by $100,000.
Then you're short.
Yeah, so to me, that's not a great way to be doing it. Either it needs to be liquid or cash, or it needs to happen when we,
do the expense?
yeah.
But I mean, there's two ways to handle that, and we could do it however the select board wants to. One way is, as you say, when you know the expense is incurred, if you want to leave it in there so that it's still invested, then you put it in things that will not depreciate. Short-term treasuries, you're matching your liabilities and expenses.
Yeah.
But you're doing it in a way that, whether it's bank CDs, short-term treasuries, something that will mature in a positive manner, so that you're not going to incur a loss and come up short.
So what we would do, what we
Or-
did in this case,
Just a second, or the other way is you can do it immediately, and then you don't have to worry about it. So it's either way we can handle it. I'm willing to take direction from you guys.
yeah, so we're taking advantage of the float.
Right. So we're trying to.
We're paying this out of general funds.
Correct.
Because there's quite a bit there.
Correct.
Because we haven't reached the end of the fiscal year.
That's another issue.
Yeah, so, the intention is to reimburse the general fund.
Correct.
From these funds, but take advantage of a little bit of the float that's there.
Correct. And that's actually.
But it's not always a positive carry. I guess that's where that's where the problem is, because these assets are invested in not just short-term money market funds. They're in equities, they're in fixed income, they're in a lot of different things. So that if any given quarter we had, a downtick in the markets,
Sure.
like we saw last year, we could have a big, huge difference between what we've drawn upon that hasn't been drawn and the performance of the assets.
Correct.
So that.
And the answer to
So-
that is
And then
not to have
what
it
would
in
end
that,
up-
in
So-
that portfolio.
What would end up happening is essentially the general fund is lending money back.
But
It would have to
it's
be repaid.
leveraging a bet on an investment that we made that, I think that's an.
So is, to
The other.
continue that thought,
The other-
Is that amount that was put in there by, mostly from transfers from the state, is that a guaranteed amount to the town from our own fund? What I'm saying is, we have these funds pooled.
Correct.
They're not all individual accounts with being managed individually. So it's a pooled fund. And do we guarantee that?
Those accounts, they're separate.
Oh, they are
They
separate?
are separate.
Okay.
And Heidi, there's a third way that it could be addressed too, which is in the same way you do it with a margin account, where you don't let the expense hit above a certain level. So if you know you've got a $315,000 balance, then you don't expense against it above, say, $250,000. So that even if there was a market downturn, you're still covered.
Yeah, I guess I don't like the idea of, like, to me, if you're taking something out of a capital account, it should be marked to the day that you take it, because anything else is just playing stock market. And I just don't know, I just think that's, when the markets are great.
Why don't we, when we get a chance, I do have I understand what happened here and how it's gonna be taken care of. And why don't we look, do we do this with a lot of funds?
Just those.
Just the capital accounts.
Just the capital accounts.
But that could be up to $2 million per fiscal year.
Well, I think there's $4 million in there in total.
Yeah, 4 million.
But that's, I mean, to me, that's.
And if I can jump in for a second, just to piggyback on what Heidi was saying, if you do it when it's done, you can manage better. Otherwise, I don't remember that transfer, and then you forget about things. It's hard to manage things when you don't have the actual numbers in front of you.
Yeah. So I suspect what we're gonna take a new approach going forward.
Okay.
I think it's the easiest way to be transparent.
Okay, and I can work with Michael on that.
And I'm sure we'll talk about the impacts of that decision.
Even if you drew it out of the capital accounts, the funds, and put it into a short-term money market, that, you could still be making a return on that money, you just won't have market risk associated with it. I mean, I just think in terms of, you can't get the timing right.
I think it evolved this way in part because there wasn't a desire to be constantly drawing on the investment accounts, every time, whether it was daily or whatever. But we can set it up so that whether it's monthly or quarterly, those are all reconciled, so that we don't run into that kind of issue.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that way it's done once.
We might be
done
funding
cleanly.
a long-term project that would have ongoing statements coming in. And I agree with you, it doesn't make sense to be rating this
Every week, every day.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
But, so we should maybe come up with it.
As a reconcile.
And Mike, it looks like we're not too far off of that anyways.
Yeah, well, one of the things that throws a monkey wrench into this whole plan is, especially with the CERC fund, where the taxpayers will vote to approve, say, a $50,000 transfer for the rec park for whatever project it might be, and we transfer the funds and we show the revenue coming into the general fund, yet we don't actually spend it for 2 more years.
Short-term money market.
There's a lot of commitments in the CERC fund going back to 2000, I want to say 18 or 19, that still haven't been spent.
I guess the flip side of that, though, is let's say we had, CERC fund commitments that were close to the amount of the balance of the CERC fund, and then we had a sustained period of declines in the markets, then you could technically not have the funds to pay for these things.
To cover your obligations.
Right, but what I'm suggesting is if we did it as it happens, as it's approved, we would show in 1 year a $50,000 revenue coming in from the CERC fund to the general fund, but then we'll show a $50,000 expense 2 years later, and it's not going to be offset by revenue.
Yeah, gotcha.
I mean.
Now, that'll be a hit to our budget right there.
Money market.
Yep.
Yeah, money market till it's spent, there's gotta be,
Well, that's advantageous now because money markets are actually earning something.
yeah, but even, it doesn't necessarily have to be it just has to be guaranteed, you know, I mean, I don't know.
Okay. What, I think we need to come up with a specific plan as to how to do this. If it's, I mean, you mentioned quarterly or monthly or quarterly or something. I think we need to work that detail out. I don't want to send you out the door saying we're going to pay these bills as they come in.
No.
And the one that you came up with, Mike, where we show it as a revenue to the rec area because we're supposed to transfer the money in, but it's never spent. We wound up with a $50,000 balance, you know, positive balance that year, and then some year down the road it shows up and throws our whole budget out of whack because we have to spend that money. I get that. There's a lot of moving pieces here that we have to be able to deal with. So.
And a good solution to that would be, as far as like using the CERC fund as an example, is if the voters approve for CERC money to go somewhere, to not actually do the transfer until we spend it.
Right.
But then again,
we put that authorization in our back pocket. Yep. And make the transfer in the same year that it's spent. I mean, that makes the most sense.
Then that could keep maybe appreciating.
Yep.
Or depreciating.
Or depreciating,
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, you can't.
Yeah, but if it's a 2-year period, as long as the fund's large enough, you can meet your obligation when you spend it versus that.
It's a gamble. But just from an accounting perspective, it all has to reconcile within the same fiscal year, or else it throws the budget out of whack. So I think there's a good way for intelligent minds to make this work.
Does the voter appropriation for a specific project really need to, I understand it's an obligation, but affect the budget process until it's actually spent?
I believe, my answer this evening, without checking it, just on my gut feeling is, we take the authorization, we put it in our back pocket, but we don't actually show the transfer in the budget until we feel that it's going to be spent in that same year.
Okay.
That would be my thought.
And it's just an obligation on paper to that particular fund.
We draw it down, until we draw it down.
But then,
Until we drop it.
but my advice on that would be that if we actually have an obligation that we're committed to, that you take it out of the investment portion of the account and hold it as cash or near cash until we draw it down and spend it. Because otherwise, you're subject to market fluctuations, both bad and good, that could affect the value of the entire fund.
But what about interest bearing?
Well, yeah, interest bearing, sure, yeah.
If it's an interest-bearing account, as long as there's no negative,
But you could also,
Which today is,
I'm sorry, but you could also do what he said, where you can set stipulation, like you've got, don't appropriate or spend, a certain level, you leave a cap where you know you have an area of like 100,000 or $500,000, whatever.
most of the funds that we deal with, these reserve accounts and that sort of thing, have a balance, and we will ask for both voter approval or make a decision to use a portion of it to fund a project. So there's usually plenty of capacity to handle that. Where you would run into a problem is with a very specific fund like the appraisal reserve account. That accumulates, some of it accumulated over time, some of it was a direct payment because we were incurring expenses. So there's an account that is specifically for that purpose and needs to be used in its entirety for that purpose.
Yes.
So, and that's where you run into where volatility might affect our ability to do that.
It might be worth then changing the policy for that particular fund, as opposed to some of the others, like the police benevolent fund, makes sense for that to grow over time.
Yeah.
But, for instance, the reappraisal reserve fund, where, it's pretty targeted and you don't want to take a loss there, that should be more.
Yeah, if it's a fund that's created for one specific expenditure, we could have a special circumstance for that.
That would make more sense, too.
Okay.
I'm happy to help, if I can be helpful at all, or
Sure.
talk about all that, but yeah. Sure. That would be great if we could tighten up some of those.
Okay, I think we're all pretty comfortable with where that landed. Thank you, Mike, thank you,
I'll talk to you
Brian.
Friday, Mike.
We're still on the subject to the budget.
Yeah, and we have Cindy here from Habitat for Humanity,
Yep,
and she didn't get a chance to talk when we were talking appropriations last meeting.
okay.
So she volunteered to sit through and give us a 2-minute thumbnail sketch.
Oh, 2 minutes.
And I apologize, you don't have any paperwork.
Okay.
We failed
We can
to
listen.
send it electronically, but I'm going to leave a copy. But I'm not going to read what I'm going to give you. So, thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak. I am Cindy from Bennington County Habitat, and we are grateful for have been receiving $2,400 in appropriations from Manchester ever since 2007. And this is our first time requesting an increase in appropriation support. So we are well rooted in Manchester. We've built 13 houses in the Manchester Jennifer Lane neighborhood. We have 8 more lots to develop. And our newly renovated restores on Memorial Avenue and our offices on Main Street, and about a quarter of our volunteers are Manchester residents. So we have a really strong Manchester support from the residents. The 13 houses we've built and the underdeveloped land and our store contribute about $28,000 in taxes annually. And we are the only organization actively building and adding to affordable home ownership inventory. So it's not rentals, it's homes to be bought. And with the price of lumber more than doubled since 2007, and we currently are spending approximately $215,000 on materials and subcontractors to build a house. This does not include the land. It does not include the labor, because we are fortunate enough to have volunteer labor. So it's about 75% of our cost, of labor is volunteers. We are trying to increase our goal to building 3 houses a year. We've been doing 1, and then I came on and we're doing 2, and we're trying to get, so we're doing 3, and we would really like to be helping with the crisis and building density, so the more we can build, the better. And that all comes down to the final line of money, obviously. So we are going to be submitting a request that we are asking for $10,000 for appropriations from Manchester. And that's really my quick spiel, and I will make sure Scott has the letter, our annual report, and our financial
Two thoughts on
Yes.
when anybody comes in with a request for a voted appropriation, they have to go out and have a petition circulated.
Yep.
And and if that's approved at town meeting, as long as the request stays the same, and you're aware of this, you go in automatically by request rather than having to circulate a petition. If the amount of money requested changes and goes up, it requires a petition. Once again. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is you would pass the threshold that would put your request, it would push it into Australian ballot.
Okay.
If the requested amount is over, do you remember the number? I think it's 2,500. I think it's over, you were under the threshold before, so it's voted from the floor at town meeting. But if it's over 2,500, it goes to Australian ballot.
So it means on the ballot where they're actually voting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, those are my 2 comments. My other comment is yikes.
I know yikes, but affordable housing is on everybody's mind.
Do you have any projects right now in Manchester?
We just are finished our house on 50 Jennifer Lane, and so our next 2 houses are actually in Bennington. But we're still paying for the 2 houses that we just built in Manchester.
Is that request on a population basis something you'll be asking from other communities also?
So.
The increase. We're being televised.
Yep. So Bennington is actually telling me that they cannot give us appropriations because it doesn't fall under the correct social service organization. And I'm shocked because many of our towns, and Manchester's been the most generous, I will say that. You know, with this ask, it's going to be a huge, leap. And so we discussed why we were thinking 10,000. It's just because of most of our homes are here. You know, most of our homes are here, and we're going to be building 8 more. You know, so we're going to have 21 homes in Jennifer Lane area, and we're looking and hoping to find other properties in the area. We've kind of been talking to a few people. That's why I mentioned infrastructure, because I'm really hoping one piece might come up that we can ask for some help with that. But
and help me out a little bit with your revenue stream. Obviously, this is a very small part of your total revenue stream.
Yep.
Are there state dollars, federal dollars, private donations?
So most of our fundraising is private, and we get state grants from VHCB, and we also were granted some great money through the Missing Middle. So the 2 homes we just built in Manchester were qualified for the Missing Middle money. So that helped, that allowed our homeowners to have a smaller mortgage. You know, so we apply those directly to the cost, and so therefore it lowers the mortgage.
That's a straight grant to lower the cost?
Yeah.
And is that a state?
Yeah, so as
So it's federal money
well, the Vermont,
through the state?
yeah, Vermont, the VHCB is the Vermont Conservation Board.
Federal dollars being managed through
Yeah,
the state.
yeah, yeah. You know, and so we try to get as much grant money as possible for each of our houses, you know, and then that allows us to keep the mortgages down so people can afford them. And, you know, I don't know if you know our process, but people who are accepted into our home buyers program can only be making between 30 and 80% of our, you know, county AMI. And so, you know, that's around 98,000, I think is what it is right now, which is crazy. But, you know, so, you know, if you took a family of 4 and they went to go get a mortgage for a home at 7%, they're only going to be approved for about $280,000, you know, and try to find a house like that. Besides, you know, some of our, you know, that's why we keep doing what we do, so we can help those. And I want to do more, and my board keeps saying slow down. So, you know, so I do know that we have to have signatures, and we've actually started. We've been kind of doing this backwards, and I apologize that we didn't come here first. But we've been starting to ask people to sign a petition for it.
And I assume that the money would be earmarked in a restricted fund for Manchester.
It never has been. It's just been restricted to construction. So.
And the other question is, if it's subject to Australian ballot, what would happen if it wasn't voted on and you lost the entire appropriation, including the $2,500 you've been getting?
Mm-hmm. So we have a board. I have a board meeting tomorrow, my board meeting, and I'm going to ask them that just to make sure that they want to go down this road.
Yeah.
Because that's a really good point.
Let me put it into context with what's going on with the budget. I mean, first of all, when we look at our operating budget and our capital budget, we try to manage the numbers to have the least possible impact on taxpayers. And quite often, our hard work on the operating budget gets blown out of the water when we get to voted appropriations. This year in particular, the voters may not be feeling quite so generous because one voted appropriation is asking for an increase of over $73,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you're probably aware of that. And I don't know how that will affect your decision. Somebody in the privacy of the voting booth may say, you know what, maybe not for this one and maybe not for that one. Because you're not in a vacuum. Your request will be considered along with others. I will say, if you circulate a petition and you're successful in that, and I know you will be, that we're going to insert it based on your petition.
Yeah.
We're not legally bound to do that, but I think we're ethically bound to do that.
Okay, right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you look at how much we've gotten in percentage compared to all the other there's about 14, 15 other organizations that get appropriations. You know, we could only see the 2021 report, we couldn't see the 2022 report online, but, you know, we only got 1% of, less than 1% of the town's appropriations. Yeah, you know, and,
It's massively skewed because of the community library, though.
Yeah,
That's like,
I know.
mean, that's 85 or 90% of the voted.
I mean, there's two.
But-
Yeah.
I'm also just going to push back on just a comment that people keep telling me from my board and other things, is that the library, when it was built, was promised the town that they wouldn't be coming to the town for appropriations, you know, and they're coming back every year asking for more. I'm saying it's a great, I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying that's kind of the street talk that I keep hearing. And so Scott, I mean, Ivan, your point about whether we get marked no because everybody's upset, other people are asking for money, could be
The other comment
something
that I'll make is that that the town can buy a lot of independent living for $420. That's a voted appropriation for the Center for Independent Living. $420. And I'll ask,
420,
how much
yeah.
independent living can you really fund with $420?
Right,
But,
right. Yep.
There's not, a lot of these requests are quite small.
quite small, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great work.
Bill?
I just wanted to ask the question, I think you put the number out there, I just want to interpret it correctly. You still have 8 lots to build in Jennifer Lane?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yep.
So 8 more houses?
Yep.
Over 1 year or 2 year?
yep, couple of years, yep, yep. We have to find people who want to move to Manchester or live here. Well, we had 135 applications go out, and we had 25 families get come back, and out of them, there was 2 people who wanted to come into Manchester, and everybody else wanted Bennington. So, you know, this is the other thing, is we've got the land here, but we need to continue to find people. What I really need the public to understand is we build homes for our essential workers, so it's not for the poor, it's for essential workers. And that's, the more people can be spreading that word, and when we're open for applications, get them to apply, because we've got the land. You know, we need to get the people who qualify between that 30 and 80% and want to have a mortgage. You know, we don't give them their houses, they have a mortgage, but it's just really part of it. So, yeah. A lot of education we're still going through.
Thank you for that information.
Good job.
All right. We're not doing so.
We're doing,
We're doing terribly.
we're in this new right along. So, I sent out memos to you, packets, and,
Yes.
just, they're not in any order, we're in the order that I came up with in our first discussion. And so, I've listed the lines there for you also.
Yep.
And so those represent changes, so the first one is the water department. So the water department is its own separate fund, so it doesn't have a page number, sorry for that. There's only 3 pages.
Yeah.
So the question was about the user fees,
Yep.
and so we re-verified those numbers, and brought those up, 716,000 there. You see it increased, but it doesn't show you what we had originally, so. I'm sorry for that. And line 4 is water assessment charges, and we also increased those to actually more reflect the accurate number that it should have been.
Okay, we have for the fiscal year 2025 budget on the user charges for water was $680.
And so we took it up to 760.
It's been increased to $716. And the last year that we have real numbers for was $714 plus. So. Oh, no.
So the sewer department, lines 2 and 3 are the ones that were questioned. User charges and assessment charges. And again, we looked at those a little more closely, and you can actually see the user charges dropped 25,000, but the assessment charges, and that's primarily because of the new sewer line, those went up substantially to 159,000.
What page are you on, Scott? Sorry.
I'm on sewer, which is page 1.
It's on the
1
sewer
on the
budget.
sewer one. So it's separate, sewer and water is separate, Heidi, isn't it?
They're at the very back of the budget.
What it is? I'm
Very,
sorry,
very
I pulled mine.
accurate. Go through all the town stuff, and the sewer is a standalone budget.
Actually, and I think this handout that was here in front of me, is that?
Oh,
are these-
we do have a
Are these
handout.
Yeah,
supposed
so
to?
there's two pieces hiding in
Yeah.
front of you.
Okay,
Yeah, and, but,
There it is, sewer.
so,
You're talking about on the revenue side,
Okay,
connections
okay,
and
sorry,
fees,
sorry,
the
sorry.
first two lines.
I'm sorry. Great, thank you.
Yeah. Now that you found that, we'll go back to the other one.
Sorry.
Through my notes.
So we're looking at zoning department, line 85.
Okay. Radios and communications.
Yeah, you can see, we had that in the assessors talk for having a public station, we pulled from that, and we plugged it back in here. This is, we talked with Peter about this, remember when he came in?
okay.
And this is a system where people could sign up online and submit an application, as long as it's complete, and then they could take it and run with it, and be recorded, and it's in the pipeline, rather than going back and forth, I need this document and that document, so.
hold on, Scott, I
Yeah.
need to find, so we're on,
Page 417 of the bigger packet, the bigger statement.
yeah, and we're in radio
Line
and
85.
communications?
Yep.
And we're adding the request from planning and zoning in,
We pulled it from assessing and moved it into zoning right there. So line 85 was 0 before when we talked to
Okay.
you last week, and now it's 3,000.
oh, yeah, I'm not seeing it on this. Okay, so where is that go? You see that? Where is he? I see this, I'm looking at that.
Maybe the new one is
The
lined
new-
different.
I got 18 pages. And mine's dated 12/13 in the bottom left.
Okay.
12.7,
Okay.
What page?
that's 12.7.
I'm looking
Okay,
at
it was saying-
12.7.
Yeah, but he has 12.13, so we can have different.
Oh, okay, okay.
None of the stuff that you're talking about, I'm finding it all in
Apparently,
these.
it's all online.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, the lines have gotten confused. So we are in, which department?
We were in planning zone.
Planning and
Oh,
zoning.
okay, great, because I was in
Even,
public.
We were in public
We
works.
were in public.
Yeah, this might be an exercise in futility.
You know what? Yeah,
Was that recording fees, is that?
planning and zoning, there we go.
No,
um,
it's software support.
Software support,
Oh, I see.
line 54.
Yeah, on ours it's line 54, but
Yeah.
And it was 0, and that's going up
and that's going up.
To 3,000.
to
But
3,000.
that was offset by the amount we took out, or roughly the amount we took out on the previous page for computers under assessors.
Okay. And that 3,000 under software support, does that become 0?
No, software support on the assessors stays the same.
Okay, so we had 2,000
We
there.
had 2,000 in the computer.
That becomes 0.
That becomes 0. And then we bumped the other one up to 3,000, which is flipping the money over.
Page 2.
I'm gonna just let you mark yours up and
Okay.
I'll wait till I get one that's.
All right, keep going, Scott.
I'm sorry.
Hang in there.
All right, fire department, if you can find the fire department, that is around line 258, which is, is it way off?
But,
It's pretty far
far
off.
from that, so it would be.
Fire department.
209.
209?
Okay,
Yeah, I found
yeah.
it.
Okay, so that was changed, that's because of the lease, they don't need that leased equipment, it's not working as they hope, so they're not gonna renew.
Oh, right, yeah. We talked about that.
Yeah,
The digital radio lease,
Okay.
yeah.
Digital radio,
86,
0.
86, the digital radio,
line 226.
yeah.
So you're about
Is going to
30
zero.
off of one, so that's on track.
That's funny.
All right, so sliding down the page a little bit, looks like Parks and Rec.
Mhm.
307 minus 30, so 277, somewhere in that range. Should be general pool supplies,
General
or pool maintenance supplies.
It's page 10, line
Yeah, page
277.
10. Okay, I still got the right page.
277.
277. Line 277.
Need pool deck repairs as the.
Pool maintenance supplies.
Yeah, so the old number was 20,
Yep.
that's 28 now, because we really didn't take into account the need for the cost of the pool deck repairs themselves. General expenses for the pool is running, you can see 20,000 2 years
Yep.
ago.
Yep,
55.
so we need to add 8,000 there.
Yeah.
Not going the right way.
They balance out, what you'll see, we're gonna be good side here. Town hall, line 385 minus 30, so 355, 357 maybe?
Okay, yeah, operating expenses?
Yeah, heating,
Yeah, it's
Is it?
356.
356, okay.
Heating, town hall,
Yeah, that was corrected, that was
Reduced to
a bit.
20,
Yeah,
We're 24.
yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Moving into the general, which is my line 467, so maybe 435 to you, something like that.
Okay, general, yep.
Line 435, MBA.
Yep.
55, it's up by 5.
So, I haven't amended that up, you know, that's still showing the 50 until you guys make.
Mine does too,
Okay.
yeah, mine.
with a note that they requested an extra
Yeah,
5,
just so
but,
it's-
So
we don't let that go, we have to deal with it and address it, that's all. Appropriation should be.
here's the
last.
risk that you run. If we include you in the budget, you can't circulate a petition to get us to raise the number. You
Right.
can only do that if you're a voted appropriation. You can circulate one, but it's probably not gonna happen. If you're a voted, this used to be a voted appropriation, and they wanted the security of being in the budget, but with that security comes us,
We have a
potentially
contract.
holding the number down.
We have a contract that says 50,000.
Yep.
Right
We have a contract?
now. An agreement.
An agreement. Of course, they're asking to amend the agreement.
Right, so do we
Apparently.
have an agreement?
I remember the agreement.
But technically or legally, what's to stop them from going out and getting signatures and getting the
That
votes?
probably wouldn't be. in the best
There's no
interest.
legal requirement for us to accommodate that.
Well, it says.
They're not
in the best interest, it's like we're
The
determining it's in
reason
the best-
they got included into the budget is because they don't fit the state statute, just like Bennington's saying about Habitat for Humanity.
Mhm.
They do not fit the definition of a
Okay.
public, whatever it is. We determined that they could not be funded through a voted appropriation. That they could circulate a petition and we'd have to reject it because they didn't meet the statutory requirement. Much like Bennington's done with Habitat for Humanity.
So then their recourse would be a legal recourse, maybe, if they wanted to argue against that.
I think we've been very accommodating
Yeah.
in allowing them to be in the budget.
I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just
No, I know.
kind of playing devil's
We're both
advocate.
just thinking out loud.
Falling now.
Okay, we'll come back to that one.
Yeah, okay, so we know that $5,000 increase request is there. And
All right, so those are the actual numbered ones that we talked about. Then there was a question that was brought up, was like the mobile home park. How many homes are there? And so then you see that we found the answer is 38. There's another pad that's unbuilt on too, so 39 could be built there. Anyways, but the question was, how do you build in the impact on the future budgets if they do connect to the sewer? And basically, we didn't have an answer for that.
Yep.
Only because of designs, we talked to Eric and Chrissy about some of the possible water connections. It could be like a single water connection to one main source and then disseminated, or there's a lot of unknowns to that. So until it's actually designed and built, or at least designed, we can't build it into the budget as far as I was concerned. Next page.
past due water.
Yeah, Heidi, I think you had brought this up, the past due water and sewer bills. So we started looking at them more aggressively in the last 3, 4, 5 months. And we actually had some threatened shut-offs and things like that. And
We used to call it Mr. Bad Wrench.
surprisingly, they were all paid off.
Mr.
Shots,
Bad Wrench.
how that happened. But, so you were looking for the numbers. So we started 3 months ago, or September, we had 61 delinquencies in the water. no, we're at 61 now, we're down from 123, which is
So,
great.
cut in
great
half.
line.
Yeah.
And similar in the sewer, down to 30 from 61.
Good job.
And so they're rather to keep on top of that. So
Good.
we're doing that. Capital equipment for the plan, capital plan for equipment. So I've asked them all to submit their equipment needs going forward in long range and replacement years and estimated costs. And I've got that semi-done, and I just have to review it with them. It was just put on my desk today, but they have all got that in, so we just have to review it and finalize. But we'll have something going forward.
The beauty of a long-term capital plan is that once you get it built and you start looking at it, then you can manage the property tax impact. And by shifting, I mean, there'll be some years where there's huge expenditures, like when we did the roundabout. That was a capital expenditure of $3.8 million, but it was fully federally funded, so there was a grant that offset that. So that doesn't have an impact on the taxpayer, but the things that do impact the taxpayer, you could shift things around to take out those highs and lows.
Yeah, right, and I think department heads understand that a little bit better too. Instead of coming to you every, 2 years in a row with huge impact costs, you plan around that a little better. So police capital account, we thought that was what police benevolent fund turned out to be. So that's
Yeah, we didn't.
non-existent.
Yeah.
basically. So what I'd like to do
Is create one.
is to create one, exactly. And so we would ask the voters for that, and I've already drafted up some of the language for it. So there'll be a two-step process. Do you want to create a fund, and then how do you want to fund it?
Yep.
And we basically fund it already. We've been sending 40,000 or whatever it is each year. But I've tweaked the language a little bit to read not just police vehicles, but police vehicle and equipment. Because they're always coming up with these needs, and all this high-tech equipment is got a short lifespan. So we need to replace a lot of these things. Instead of already running through the well as fast as we can. If we build for it, we'd be better off and start planning those.
To that end, where are we, I know that there was some discussion kind of behind the scenes about the next that console, or
The
putting.
second console.
The second
yeah.
console, where are we with that?
We're nowhere as far as finding the money, but the needs are there, and I just don't know where to turn yet. I'm trying to get through this budget process before we figure that out.
Kind of related question. What's the balance in our ARPA fund at the moment, roughly?
Mike knows that offhand. I don't have it with me.
200 or 300 grand, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it's just around that. I couldn't swear to it, but the last time I looked at the memo, but
Okay.
Do we have
We do have a good.
committed funds that haven't been spent yet?
Yes.
We do,
We do.
yeah.
That's,
yeah, I've got a reconciliation, I've got a spreadsheet keeping track of it all.
yeah.
Can you send us an update of that sometime in the next
I'll do that.
little? Great,
I'll get it from him.
okay.
Hey,
And
One
then,
of the things I'm noticing too is in the capital section, under expenses, under the town clerk records preservation,
yep,
now, we're showing an expense of $25,000 for fiscal '24. Now, if we incur that expense, that's gonna be a transfer out of a reserve fund, but we're not showing the offsetting revenue. And they should be. Because they should wash, because it's a,
Yeah.
this was last year's approval that we did, right?
Yeah.
But we have zero in there right now, Mike, for FY
no, there's
25.
25,000 for '24.
For 24.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
But he's right, that's part of the thing with grants. It's if you plug in a huge number and you don't get that number, you don't get the grant. If it's not set up properly in the revenue side.
My recollection was that was a 3-year plan.
The town clerk one.
That records preservation, that particular part of it was a 3-year commitment. But I think.
Actually, Anita's on the phone right now. Anita, you there?
Was that partially offset by a fee increase too? I may be wrong.
No, there was a fee increase for recording from up to to $15, and the state requires of that $15, $4 be put into this reserve fund,
Right,
and that's ongoing.
yeah.
So it's funding itself, that
Well,
reserve
not a
fund.
lot, but yeah. I mean, we did approve it.
I think, I believe what's reflected here in the capital was a separate task that spanned 3 years, and this was what we committed. I'm sure Anita could straighten that out for me, but if we go
It
back.
ended last year anyway.
She's muted, she may not be there.
Okay, we can come back to that. We're under the gun here.
Yeah.
All right, so that's where we're at right now. So you look at the final page. We did draw the percentages in for you on each department too. So, I mean, the expenses.
I've gone way past.
It's in the other one. That's sewer, oh, it is. Okay.
The expenses we've managed to reduce by almost 1%.
I saw that. If you back out the voter
Back out the-
appropriations.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I've got that. I had that number here.
Last time you guys didn't have that number.
I did.
You did.
He calculated it.
It's in my handwriting.
But, you know, again, we got the major increase requested from the library coming at us. You'll see the revenues are down substantially, which
Right.
skews everything to.
Non-tax revenues are down 17.7%.
So quickly pulled the revenues to see where that's coming from. And there's like 5 or 6 different departments added to that, and I'll quickly go over that. We've got the assessors down 42,000 because the reappraisal's been completed.
Yep.
Highway's down 226. That was because we received a paving grant for 200,000 and grants and aid for 25,000, and we're not in line to get those this year. Police is down 83,000, which is basically the cops grant second year reduction in funding. And then the Arlington Rescue Dispatch had been built in there last year, and we never got contracted with that.
But if we get the extra console, we probably will.
If they decide to go with it.
And London, right?
It was their choice not to join us. It wasn't because we didn't have the equipment. We had the equipment. They chose not to. Same thing, the Arlington administrator said to me, we're gonna hold off on, I think it was the fire also. But then there was a big issue that happened, and they suddenly jumped back on, and they found the money to fund it, so. Anyways, Parks and Rec was down 34, that was swim team registration and gate receipts. General revenue was down 16, which is the loss of the rent from the Depot Street property. And then capital was 180,000, which is basically grant revenue that had been built in from the second unit.
Yeah, but those all had specific expenses that were attached to them, so it's not a hit to our operating
Right.
budget.
I'm just trying to see why the revenue.
Or I should say our operating budget was up by a similar amount last year because it was offset by those grants. So those numbers can be a little bit misleading. It's kind of like our total budget was huge the year we built the roundabout because it was inflated by $3.8 million.
But the state's the same boat right now. They got all this federal funding that's expiring this year. And then next year, how do you find all these programs they invented? You know?
It's going to be tough. I mean, what's really going to hit the tax rate are the increases on the voted appropriations. I mean, those are the biggest impacts that we have here. When you start channeling those in, it really.
Well, I also would like to see something in here. I know this is not helping the problem, but we need to talk about the flood mitigation situation and that federal money that's available for the.
Question related to that. I don't know because I didn't go down there. Was there substantial flooding on Richville Road?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay.
All right. So the locals felt that there was substantial danger. Jim Henderson went down, took pictures and measurements, and said that we dodged the bullet and held.
So you think the, hard to say, hopefully some of the remedial work that we did helped.
Josh said it's gonna flood again.
Yeah.
It did flood again.
Yeah.
You know, how often it floods is not up to us. We do have, one person in the pipeline for a buyout, Mark Butler, on the other side of, Richville.
Okay.
Where the water kind of washes out there.
Yeah.
And then the person that owns, over by the post office, the nearest post office.
Okay.
I've forgotten his name now. He goes by John, his name's Sean. Whatever, he's showing interest, but Mark's, we've already started the paperwork on him, so the state's involved in that.
I mean, unfortunately, it's the new reality is that these floods are gonna happen on a regular basis, apparently. I had a question, and maybe Mike, you know, I'm sure either one of you can answer this. Where do we find the money that's being spent on street fests and fireworks in the budget?
Parks and Rec.
It's in Parks and Rec. I didn't see it, but I wasn't.
Well, there's a line item called programs,
Okay.
and programs has a lot of.
Okay, so it's in there.
Yes, it's in there.
So this budget is anticipating level funding for those kind of
It
programs?
was actually decreased slightly from 47 to 45,
Yeah. Okay.
but we will have street fest.
That police fund that we're not gonna be getting,
Yeah.
that officer that we hired, I think, with that money isn't going away.
The cops grant
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
yes, I mean, that's.
And
that's
I
the
think we
idea behind
anticipated
that.
that.
We
thought
got the
that.
grant,
We got the grant.
but it only covered
a year, I think.
a year and a
I thought
little
it was
bit.
2 years.
Maybe
It was
two years.
like a year and a quarter,
Yeah.
I
probably.
think it covers, I think they pay in three-year segments.
Yeah, okay.
But you're right, it may only cover like a year and a half of the
Yeah,
segment.
it was,
And I doubt that they're gonna wanna get rid of that position.
but they also, in order to participate in that program, even though they were only gonna fund something just under a year and a half of it, it's a 5-year commitment.
Right.
They
Right.
required that you keep this person for 5 years, and they would fund a year and a half of
Right.
that, but you're on
That
the
just
hook,
one,
you're on the
yeah.
hook for the other
Right,
3.5 years.
just wanted to mention it,
Yeah, yeah.
because that's ongoing expense. I agree with Heidi that I'd love to figure out a way to work on that flood mitigation program. And I spoke with Scott briefly about that. Part of the issue for me is that you take a big hit to the grand list and they're not gonna leave, but the reasoning for me to get behind it, solidly behind it, is that it's an investment in our, in the town's ability, to do business. I mean, I don't know what it is exactly, but all of Green Mountain Estates plus everybody else living up and down Bournebrook, Liebrook, that are affected, if you add that up, I imagine it's somewhere between 15 and 20, possibly $1 million on the grand list. Maybe not quite that
Plus, we
much.
now own the street,
We own that.
and so we need to protect that investment, whatever.
Well, there's that now too.
Yeah,
That's a
so-
new, that's a
And
new
it's 75% matched by federal money, so it's kind of like, if you look at what we would actually have to put in as a town, and I'd like to know the balance on that, on the ARPA money, but we have to technically spend that within a certain time frame.
We're committed by the
So I feel like that's,
24. So, just to clarify for me, so you're thinking of, what can we do over there through maybe like that NRCS program that we just completed these projects with, like Liebrook and
the
Bourne?
people that had the 2 proposals for us.
The
whole team.
runoff, the
Yeah,
sediment,
yeah,
I call them
okay,
sediment
I got you.
lagoons.
Yeah.
So
you
if you
know.
look at the aggregate of, there was a high, medium, and a low plan for both of the
Right,
projects. And
right.
if you look at the median one and the potential cost, the kind of average cost of those projects, our percentage as a town would be anywhere between $100,000 to $200,000.
The only thing
Plus-
I don't get
Yeah.
is how they have one of those, like lagoons, I call it, that's currently on land owned by Natural Foam Bedding Way. Or, you know, and would that be a purchase? Would the town take it by eminent domain?
I don't know, I
How
can't
does that
imagine.
work?
An easement type of situation.
Would it be, would they grant the easement to be able to go forward? It's in their best interest based on the plans that we were shown.
Yeah, you know, we anticipated some pushback when we went after Liebrook and Mighty Lane. What's the one up by the Butternut Lane?
Yeah.
But once people understood that it was to their benefit, they all backed down and signed off.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, I think I would just be
All right.
interested in
Well, I'll
understanding
get
that.
someone, we'll start looking at that, and so it just doesn't die here.
I mean, it can't die because it has to happen in the next year in order to, I mean.
Take advantage of
that money.
the offset
Yeah.
money.
I'll
So,
talk with,
I have a question. How come you have 37 more lines in your budget than we have?
yeah, so I asked, I was not here for most of the day today, and I asked them to make copies and put them out here for you, so apparently they grabbed the original, not the
We'll
most
get the,
recent one.
we'll get the most recent one in January 2nd.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean,
I'll
I'll
make it myself.
I find it hard to believe that there's been 37 lines added somewhere early on in the document to make it that far off. And I don't know why the numbering is so far off. 'Cause I think most, I still have notes all over my original, so that's what I'm working on from.
Yeah, never throw out.
It kind of worries me a little bit when all of a sudden 37 lines show up and I'm not seeing them.
We'll look at them side by side.
Yeah.
So we have 5 minutes that we probably have to extend. We have to go
I
into
know, looks like we
executive
probably
session.
do,
And we have to, we're gonna probably make
It looks like we're gonna
a
make a,
decision.
I have someone with a hand up, but if you have time.
It's actually just a point of clarification. This is Jonathan West. Are you going to be coming back after the executive session and saying?
The reason we're going into executive session, Jonathan, is to discuss the planning commission appointment. So it's through the, I don't mind disclosing that. It's for the appointment of a public official.
Sure.
So we will most likely be taking action when we come back out to appoint someone to the planning commission.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we can still be here when you guys come back.
I'll just keep it running.
So
Thanks, Scott.
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting.
Second.
Well,
Laura, you can have it.
Scott can give that to whoever he wants to for the second.
And then you do the complicated one.
All in favor, go aye.
Aye.
Go aye.
Go aye. All in favor, go aye.
Go aye.
Go aye. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing town committee board appointments, the premature disclosure of which could put the town at a distinct disadvantage.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Actually, we don't need to put that added language into that one because the only.
I just leave you for a spin.
We're back in open session. Thank you for your patience.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion based on the recommendation of the search committee for positions to the planning commission that we appoint Leslie Berg to the planning commission and we appoint Thomas West as an alternate.
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Thomas. It's a pretty meaningful appointment, and we're very happy to have you on board.
Thank you, I really appreciate you saying that.
And
Did we want to do anything else while we're, Chris Conti as an alternate for the design advisory committee?
That's probably a good idea.
Yes, okay.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, in addition, I'd like to move that we appoint Chris Conti as an alternate to the Design Advisory Committee as recommended by the search committee.
I second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Again, that's unanimous.
This was adjourned.
Is there any other business to be conducted?
No. There was something, but it's okay. It might have
Is that
just-
a motion to
It may
adjourn?
have just been an acknowledgement of something that happened.
Move
but
to adjourn.
Second.
Non-debatable motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you for attending.
Thanks for
Thomas.
waiting.
Congratulations.